How are you doing, my friend?
Good. How are you? Welcome to the show, Sports and Hip Hop with DJ Mad Max, live 365 iHeartRadio, Mad Max Radio. James C. Clayton is here. Get Fast is available now. Make sure everyone go watch that. Available premiering November 15th. How are you
Absolutely. Well,
doing?
thank you. Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Of course. How's it being received so far? Because I'm going to ask a follow-up question that's important to the continuation. So, how is it being received?
Well, I'm delighted to discover that it's being well received. Actually, it's been received better than the last film, and the last film, was received well enough. People are really excited, and one of the comments that I got from a reviewer was, it basically excited the 12-year-old version of himself, and he liked that. And so I'm going to run with that because that is the fun movie that I set out to make.
Yeah, this was something that you always wanted to make. You kind of wanted to dive into the territory of something of a Spielberg, something action wise from the 80s and 90s that took you back to your childhood.
Absolutely. Like those action adventure films that I grew up with. It's what always, excited me as a filmmaker and actually, filled me with hope. We live in such cynical times right now.
Oh,
I really want to give people just something that they don't need to take too seriously and kind of feel good. I mean, the caveat being that it is an action film and a lot of people get shot and there's a lot of explosions and stuff, but it's supposed to be in good fun and make believe.
yeah. And how much of it has it been kind of a breath of fresh air for you? Because you're someone that it was really before Bulletproof, kind of coming off of four horror films that you made on your own. So, how does it feel to dip into
Oh,
a different genre with action now?
oh, it's a breath of fresh air. I mean, I love horror. I
Mhm.
think I would probably, dabble in that genre again. And it certainly is a great, place to start in because, it's relatively cost effective and the characters can be, quite robust. I mean, for Candyland in particular, I lost 50 pounds from this normal weight of mine to play that role. It was quite an endeavor. But to answer your question, it's amazing. I mean, you get to act like a cool guy on screen and fire guns and run away from people. I mean, it's not really work at the end of the day.
No, it's the dream job. And they say you never work a day in your life if you do what you love.
That's very true. That's very true. I was talking to a contemporary acting friend of mine, and I said I feel like I've been retired for the last 2 years.
Wow.
Because I've been fortunate enough to be really busy in the last two, just focusing on these films and my family. It's been great times.
No,
Yeah.
you definitely have to focus on that. And now, because you're getting such great reception, do you think that you're going to be kicking in gear here, the next film in this series?
Well, I think so. I mean, there's one waiting in the wings, and I really wanted to see what the reception to the second film will be, and we'll see what the next coming weeks will hold for it. But everyone has been asking about the third installment, and I personally think it's going to be better than the last two. I'd like to up the ante, but I can't give you anything official yet on an announcement.
Yeah. And Lou Diamond Phillips, what made you think of him for this role? Because I heard that you wrote a letter to him and reaching out to get him a part of this movie, The Cowboy.
Oh, well, I grew up watching Lou Diamond Phillips. He's one of the great legendary actors, of his generation. And I remember dancing to La Bamba when I was like 5 or 6 years old. Like, no joke. I mean, he was one of my favorite actors growing up and still is one of my favorite actors, not to say it in past tense. But I actually, fortunately, had worked with him probably about 10, 15 years ago when I was a director's assistant. And he used to call me Shadow. And I just thought he was the nicest guy. And what an incredible actor in person. So when, the opportunity came to have a character that was appropriate enough to offer him, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, and he definitely did his thing with this role, and you could tell that he enjoyed playing it. And I know just hearing his feedback on it, he had a great time on this film working with you.
He absolutely did. And he does charming killer effortlessly.
Yeah.
I will say that. Like, he puts on that duster and he's twirling his beard and he's quite formidable to stand in front of. Like no acting required. And also too, like he is the nicest guy that you could ever meet. He really is like he's such a big movie star already. And I just wish he just blows it off the top and becomes the biggest. He deserves to be the number one actor in the world right now. Like forget some of these other guys.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. He's so good.
Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of them are overrated, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But how did you go about speaking with the Army vet? Because this is how you were able to do the rocket launcher scene and so a lot of the shootout scenes.
Oh, that's a really great question. Well, I've been collaborating with an Army vet. His name's Thomas Potter for a number of years, and he does stunt coordinating in Vancouver, British Columbia. And so he was heavily involved in Bulletproof and a lot of the armoring and stuff. And he's just so good at his job. And I was thinking about, this rocket launcher sequence that I wanted to do, and I wrote it. And I thought, well, I wonder if it's believable or not, right? So I called Thomas and he read it and he said, you know what? 9 times out of 10, it's not. However, if you use this particular rocket launcher, it would be because the missile doesn't arm until a certain amount of feet. So if you make this adjustment, you're good to go. And I tell you, without fail, everyone who read the script leading up to filming, they went, that's too cartoony. It's not believable. I said, that's probably one of the most realistic things in the movie. You
Wow.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when portraying your role as a thief, because I heard that there's an inspiration here with Clint Eastwood and with the Western roles that he played back in the day. Is that kind of where you drew it from?
Yeah, I mean the kernel of the idea did start with The Man with No Name and Clint Eastwood and Sergio Leone. But I'd be lying if it wasn't heavily informed by all of those great off the cuff characters and actors from the past. Like there's, Harrison Ford as Han Solo or Bruce Willis as John McClane, or even if you go as far back and you watch some of those old Gary Cooper westerns, from the
Yeah.
40s, he's got that flippant kind of attitude. I mean, it's definitely an archetype that I was really dreaming to jump into, and man, it's fun, really fun.
It definitely is. I could tell you enjoy playing it. And how is it just when you coordinate both of it? Because being a director and an actor, is it easier now that you kind of are just playing in your vision per se, as far as playing a different role in someone else's vision?
Yeah, it certainly helps that, I'm one of the screenwriters and the creator of the character. I mean, that's for sure. I think more so, it's also the prep. Like I have such an incredible team. All of my producing partners, Greendale Productions, Peacemaker Filmworks, they co-produced on the last two films, and essentially they gave me the ability to prep all the shots and even know the exact edit before going into filming. And they all knew everything. So the crew, I basically had a chance to pre-direct the crew so that when I got there, we didn't have to be prescriptive about anything. If we needed to change a shot or we needed to improvise, we could do it. We were loose enough to do it, and everyone could work on it. And then I was relaxed enough to be able to work with the actors. And that's to me, I think that's the only way I could do it. Now, that being said, if I always jokingly say the role was like a There Will Be Blood or something, and I had to transform myself, I think I would think real hard and long about whether or not I should direct as well, because there is a splitting of the brains to a certain extent.
But where would you say you kind of learn that easy technique to work with actors and kind of just let them go on their own and just develop just how they feel comfortable playing the role? Where would you say you kind of took that from?
Yeah, I mean, it's years of experience as an actor. I've been acting since I was a kid. I mean, every actor is different. Most actors require a light touch, and you're there kind of really just to kind of guide. Some actors like for you to dive into the grit with them, and it all depends on how they work. I mean, I got to hand it off to a fine actress, and acting teacher, Lori Triolo, and she's from New York. And she was really the person who really taught me how to act in the sense of like the craft of acting, the respect of acting. And she gave me such a breadth, like a wide toolbox in order to draw from, because every actor has different languages of going about it. That it gives me quite a sense of comfort and joy to do those things.
Yeah. And you've been in the business for a long time, always acting in plays, doing different things, singing as well. I heard that you were singing early on. Was this is some Bee
Yeah,
Gees things? I was
yeah. BJ, it's so funny. I used to have the falsetto when I was very, very young. I was doing more of the singing when I was younger. I think my singing voice really probably hit a sunset when I was about 21, 22, when it really dropped a timber, and I just can't do it's not what it used to be, my friend. But I wouldn't be embarrassed to still try.
No musicals in the future.
Well, you never know. You never know. We'll see if it's appropriate or not.
Yeah. But you get this opportunity with the casting thing in high school, and all of a sudden you get casted as the Russian soldier and you're on set with Harrison Ford. That must have been the moment to be just like, wow, I gotta dive full board into this industry.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. I mean, I was 16, I was in high school when that happened. And that was in Winnipeg, Manitoba. So Winnipeg, Manitoba, if you're not familiar with it, it's like being in the middle of Nebraska in the United States, basically. And so, the idea of being in film on a film set, or just the idea of what the industry and the art form is, it's a very romanticized and very kind of narrow focused. So when that happened, and the director was Catherine Bigelow as well, Academy Award winning from The Hurt Locker, Catherine Bigelow. So I got a chance to watch her work. When we landed on set and Harrison Ford's there and the set's there and Catherine Bigelow's there, it knocked my socks off. I'll just be honest with you. And seeing people of that caliber in person, especially at any age, you understand quite quickly why they are who they are, because they just have this presence that you can't describe.
No.
Yeah, so I was hooked, to say the least.
Yeah, legends, icons. He's one of his own there, Harrison Ford. And you were doing
Yeah.
some, I heard lightsaber battles. I read that one went viral. Is that true?
No, no, gosh,
No,
no. I
no.
think that's me. I mean, I hope it didn't go. No, you may have heard jokingly when I was young, probably around 15 or so, I was already dabbling with the idea of doing action films. So I was coordinating my own lightsaber fights, which makes me sound like the biggest dork in the world right now. But I was young, right? The prequels had just come out, and I actually had coordinated a giant fight sequence with my friends, and we were going to film it. That's what the story is. I
Okay.
wanted to film it as a director, and I wanted to do the whole thing. And what happened is the day of filming, every single person chickened out.
Oh, so it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. No, but we rehearsed it. I'm not kidding you. 2 months we rehearsed it.
Wow.
Oh yeah. I look back at it now, and I must have been so insufferable with them because you're a kid telling your kid friends what to do. They probably were just waiting to tell me to take a hike, you know?
Uh, but I mean, you kept on going here, and with horror too, starting there, watching films with your mother. I heard that she was watching Alien with you. So how does she look at your films now that you're in the field and you're directing your own and acting in them? So how does she look at your films?
She couldn't be more proud. I mean, yeah, I grew up watching movies with my mom. I think that's, yeah, probably a common story. You watch movies with your family. But we had a particular bond with it. I mean, say what you want about whether or not it was appropriate for her parenting or not, but we were watching Aliens and Terminator when I was like in grade two, right? Like I was getting the full scope of everything. And looking back on it, it's probably why I fell in love with film so much, because I got such an early appreciation for it.
Yeah. Fine arts, this was something that there was a teacher that told you that you should go after that degree. Have you reconsidered it at all? Because I didn't hear that you want to
Yeah,
add that to
you know what I
storyboarding.
Yeah, I never pursued that. I mean, my teacher, at the time, did encourage me to do that. It's funny. I was talking to my wife and son about that the other day. I got a 3-year-old and a 10-month-old.
Oh, congrats.
And, oh, thank you. And I'm starting to draw with the 3-year-old now. And it's funny that you asked that question because I used to be able to draw photorealistic, and I'm so out of practice because I actually have just been devoting my time to the craft of acting and writing and directing and all of that. I haven't really drawn in such a long time. But now that I've got a son, I feel like we'll see where that goes. That might come back.
It might spark that inspiration for you.
I'm feeling it at least.
Yeah.
Definitely.
With all the horror stuff too, because you want to work with Anthony Hopkins. What's the decision? What makes you want to work with him? I heard about him and an Owen Wilson, but why Anthony Hopkins first?
Oh, I mean, what else is there to say except that I think Anthony Hopkins is the best actor. I just absolutely think he's the best actor that ever was and ever is. That's my opinion, and I know um, some people may differ in who they think, but I just watch him, and I've never seen him act a day in his life. And his performances are so effortless. It could only be a dream to be able to work with him, let alone a dream to even kind of touch the sphere of the level of artistry. I mean, this is a guy that learned his craft from Laurence Olivier on stage, and I mean, I'm at a loss of words because it is hard to describe the level of talent and reverence that I have for him as an artist.
Yeah.
And then Owen Wilson, I just love Owen Wilson. I think he's just one of the sweetest guys ever. And I personally named my son after him, although my wife would disagree. But I had him in mind when we were considering, names for my son.
Wow. What's your favorite role from Owen Wilson that drew you into him as an actor?
Oh gosh, I mean, I think all of the Wes Anderson films, were the first entry, but him in Darjeeling Express.
Okay.
Have you seen that film?
I have not seen that. I've heard of it.
It,
I've never seen it though.
it's on Disney Plus. I think it's the third or fourth Wes Anderson film that he did. Um, it is really good, and he's really good. And Adrian Brody's in it, Jason Schwartzman's in it, and it's really about three grieving brothers that are trapped on not trapped, but they're on a train ride, the Darjeeling Express in India. And you should certainly watch that film. It is touching, but also it's really funny and really honest.
You mentioned before about horror because people get into it because it's an easier budget. You can manage it and you can kickstart your career. Do you feel as though that's maybe not why we get the great horror films of the past because people aren't really doing it for passion? They're just doing it to get their career kickstarted in a way. Do you think that could be an issue why?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't necessarily think so, because a lot of the recent great horror films that have come out were low budget. I mean, look at The Witch,
Yeah,
right?
that
I
was a
think
good
that
one.
budget was, yeah, I think it was maybe $1 million, right? I think I think with respect to maybe the great horror films not being there or a certain level of films, I think it might be speaking more just to the state of the industry and where it's at right now, which always goes through ebbs and flows. I mean, the late 60s, before we came up into the golden era of the 70s, the end of the 80s, and then all of a sudden Tarantino comes out and we've got that whole independent 90s burst of film. I think we're on the cusp of something like that again too. And I think like my comment about horror film is that it's accessible for first-time filmmakers. And you can make a masterpiece film with no budget. It really does come down to the execution and the skill. And I believe it was Scorsese who said this, but he said that it really only matters what's inside the frame. Everything else doesn't matter. So as soon as you really understand that it's about what's inside the frame and how you're visually telling a story, you can get away with a lot. Like you can really get away with a lot.
Yeah, at 29 is really when you took the final risk there for you to say that you saw that other actors were creating their own films and then you went ahead and said that yeah, I'm going to start directing and doing my own thing. So is that kind of the future for the industry now when you're looking at it? You mentioned independent before, especially with Tarantino, what he did in the 90s. Is that the future for film?
I think it's certainly a huge part of it. Yeah, I mean, just with the fact that there's the accessibility of your iPhone, the accessibility of all of the technologies to make film, but now the next level is going to be self-distribution. I mean, it's already happened with YouTube and all of that, but once that becomes advanced enough to get to a certain level where you start really creating your own micro film communities, I think it will be that. And my other comment to it is if you look at film history, it started off like that anyways. The film has always been about people who were producing, acting, directing these short films, and then it kind of morphed into there was a studio system, and then they had to branch out and they had to diversify and all of that into more crew and more cast. But it's always been an all-encompassing endeavor. So to me, it felt like a no-brainer.
What would you say is your style of horror? when you look at it, especially something that you would like to dive into? What is that style for you? Do you kind of like the 70s era? Do you like the black and white Universal monster era? There's so many eras there. Are you a slasher guy? What do you like?
I do like slashers. So I would say probably the horror films of like the 70s and then into the late 70s when the slasher started with Halloween.
Halloween.
I mean, arguably Psycho, right?
Yeah.
Was
Hitchcock.
the start of that with Hitchcock. I think I'd be in that realm. I mean, not to say that I wouldn't make an alien movie,
Oh
but
yeah.
that is lofty fruit. We'll see if that opportunity ever came. I don't think I'd ever dabble in the black and white Universal monster stuff, only because like Robert Eggers, who did The Witch. I mean, that guy's a genius. He's got Nosferatu coming out in December. I mean, he's already doing that. No one's going to touch him. He's such a creative genius. So I'd probably take a stab at a slasher.
A
Yeah,
slasher. Yeah, that would be
yeah,
interesting. Similar to Psycho, because there's an actual storyline and a twist.
absolutely. And I also, I mean, how can you not appreciate the original Omen with Gregory Peck
Oh, the
or The
classic.
Exorcist, right? Like both of those films are really, really well done and like truly terrifying.
Powerful. The Exorcist is powerful.
Still holds up today, top three.
It does.
Yeah,
Crazy. But I mean, you have a lot on the way here. So, is there other film ideas that you're having on the side of this next one after Get Fast? Is there something that you're looking at already?
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have multiple projects in various stages of development. I've got my next action franchise, which is an action film noir-esque kind of neo-noir thing that's much grittier and more serious and cynical than the Thief, franchise. So I'm hoping that I can shoot that next year. And then I also have an action sci-fi that's like a big chase with aliens and stuff, very Spielberg-esque as well. And then I'm also in early stages of development of a true life story, actually, that takes place during the Rwandan genocide in the 90s. And it's almost kind of like a Magnificent Seven kind of story of,
Okay.
about hope and resilience. And that's something I'd love to go to camera, late 2026, actually in Rwanda and kind of expand. That's a bigger production though. So we'll see. We'll see the timeline on that.
Are you in Vancouver right now? Are you back in Canada?
I am. I'm back in Canada right now. Yeah, I'm in my home office, and this is actually the original key art posters for Bulletproof, which was originally titled Death Pursuit.
Wow.
So you're seeing stuff that's never been published before.
Wow. So we get the exclusive here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'll tell you, stay in Canada. I'm telling you right now.
I've heard it's pretty. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, you're welcome here. You're welcome here if you need
Oh
to
yeah.
come and take.
I might have to seek a hiding place out soon. You don't know.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, you should be working on a 1984. That's what you should be doing. Create another 1984.
Oh boy. Well, it's funny you say that. We do have other ideas in development, very early stages that are kind of in line to, altered futures like that. So
Oh,
hopefully it doesn't become, so hopefully it stays science fiction. That's
yeah.
what we'd like to hope, right?
I'm praying.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, you've been all around now. So how would you compare the film scene out in LA compared to being in Vancouver? How would you compare the two scenes? Because they got a big, you guys have a big industry out there in Canada.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to compare because Vancouver is predominantly it really is a service town. We get the benefit of working on a lot of studio and TV. So like the craftspeople and the crew and the cast talent, they're phenomenal here. Like you've got first rate people that are working in the world and locations are great. In terms of LA, I mean, it's still where you need to go to get the deal done. It's still where you need to go and get, you know, those top three on the call sheet names that are going to make or break the financing of your movie. Pardon me. So it's hard to compare. I mean, there's a lot of great filming that happens in Los Angeles, but I do see that it's more of like the kernel of the start of a film, and Vancouver is very representative of like where the actual like making of the bread is, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great place to film too.
It
out there in
is. It is.
Vancouver.
I would love to shoot a film in LA. I mean, I'm such a huge fan of well, of many directors that have filmed there, but the movie Heat, I've seen
Okay.
that movie probably about 100 times. And I mean, it was all shot in Los Angeles, and it's such a cool city on screen. It's phenomenal.
Big Scorsese fan, I heard.
Huge Scorsese. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, those were his films are the ones that most impacted me growing up. I mean, I remember when I saw Taxi Driver for the first time. And I mean, how does that not change your life? You know, not to sound, dramatic about it, but like, you then you start watching all of this stuff and you're watching Goodfellas and you're watching, The Last Temptation of Christ, and you're watching Casino, which is, my gosh, Casino is just this monstrous film. And then of course, I mean, I could name every film of his. He's never made a bad movie. Never.
Uh, but James, I mean, you've got a lot on the way here. Is there anything else you'd love to let your fans know that we didn't cover here today that you want to get out there?
Oh, well, first and foremost, thank you to everyone who's been, supporting and watching, the journey that I've been on, and the continued journey. And I would just say, like, anyone who's out there who, wants to make their own film or pursue acting or anything, it really just comes down to it, and it sounds cheesy, just do it, and, put in the work, because most of it does come down to luck, but the luck only works if you've put in the hard work. So you got to be just ready for it. And it is such a craft and such a process. It will happen if you stick with it. I mean, I've been at it since I mean, I'm a young man. I've been at it 25 years,
Long
right?
time.
So it takes a long time, right? But it, like any art, your art is only as good as, the what you're expressing. So, you need time to live. You need time to make mistakes. That only makes your art better, right? So I would say make as many mistakes as you can too.
Make mistakes. And you got play-by-play entertainment. So if you could kind of, why don't we close out with that? With you starting your own company, the future of the company right now, and just important advice. You mentioned making mistakes before, but if someone out there wants to create their own film company right now.
Yeah, well, I would say do it. I would say start within your means, because, going back to how accessible all the technology and everything is now, I'd say create a film that you know that you can make with what you have. And that's how I started. And if it doesn't turn out, that's okay. Just continue and make the next one. Most first films don't turn out. So as long as you're okay to make, a pile of garbage, then I say that you're ready for the film business. Like, just go and do it. And then in terms of starting your own company, I mean, it's easy. You pick a name and find someone who knows business, right? So you can focus on the creative, get a good business partner, and again, just keep your nuts small, as you're building out, and then just go from there.
And if you have to take 12 roles in that first film to produce, take
You
those
will
12 roles.
have to. You will, and you'll have to do the crafty, and you'll have to do the sound, because the budgets will be very modest.
Yeah.
That's okay, because then you'll know what all of the other departments entail. You'll have enough knowledge to be dangerous enough and to know when something's working and something's not, and actually how to help the people that you're collaborating with as well.
Was that film that you did with the 12 roles? And was it like the Coming to America with Eddie Murphy and it had all these different shots and different makeup? Was that kind of how it was?
Oh, it was kind of, I mean, it was about, I mean, unfortunately, that film never saw the light of day. It got all kind of wrapped up in a distribution, not battle, wrong word, but it just got kind of hung up on its distribution model. But it's a wonderful film. It's basically about a comedian. It's called Down the Line. It's about a comedian who decides, I'm going to give up comedy. And he goes to sleep and he's unsure. And then all of a sudden he wakes up and he's trapped inside a room. And basically, the whole premise is, and it's a genius premise, Rusty Nixon is the guy who wrote and directed the film, is that every night when this guy would go to sleep, a copy of his exact self at that moment would download into a room. So when he's stuck in between the day before and the day after, which appears later in the film, another window kind of opens up and he can see this other person because they can't get into each other's rooms. So you're following the comedian when he wasn't sure if he made the right decision. But the day before is the angry guy who's like, I'm going to quit because I can't do this. And the day after is the guy who followed through and he's a mess. He's drunk and he partied too much. And then you keep going further down the line. And it's actually quite a beautiful story because it speaks to, what it means to be an artist, but it speaks to like kind of like what it means to be human as well too, and the ramifications of our choices and also believing in yourself too.
That's the main thing. That's why you've gotten this far too, by believing in yourself as well.
Oh, yes, you have to. Yeah, absolutely. And other people too, and believing in those other people that you collaborate with as well.
Yeah, it's all about the production family, and you've got that family now since Bulletproof.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're such great guys and women too. I mean, it's everyone that I collaborate with. I'm so blessed and I hope to continue to do so, you know.
You will. I'm looking forward to what you got in the future here. And you got
Oh,
to go check out the new film, Get Fast. Make sure everyone go watch that, support. I want to thank you again, James, for coming on the show. Any final words that you have? Following you on Instagram and the socials and all that. Thank you to Laura and Amy as well for setting this up.
yeah. Thank you, Laura and Amy. And yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, James_C_Clayton. I'm there. You'll get all the latest updates. And I'm on Twitter as well, Clayton Actor, and Facebook. And yeah, just check out Get Fast, and there's a lot more coming.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it, James. Thank you for coming on the show. It was a great time speaking with you, man.
My pleasure.
Of
Take care.
course. Take care anytime.
See ya.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.